Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits VOD, countless others end up DOA. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Korngut. I am the managing editor of Dread Central. I am also a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. Usually on this podcast, we talk about horror projects that didn't actually make it to the finish line, but every once in a while, we like to dig the brains behind some of our favorite voices in horror to hear what it takes to actually get a movie made these days. We've talked with the filmmakers behind titles like Alone with You, Werewolves Within, The Mortuary Collection, The Boy Behind the Door, and more. Today, we are speaking with director William Brent Bell. He's directed the upcoming horror release, Orphan First Kill. This is the prequel film to the 2009 Dark Castle Entertainment horror classic, Orphan. The new film stars Julia Stiles and Isabelle Furhman, and it sees a release on August 19th. You can catch Orphan First Kill in select theaters, on demand, and on Paramount+. William Brent Bell is also the director of some modern horror classics, such as Stay Alive, The Boy, and The Devil Inside. So please enjoy this interview with Orphan First Kill director William Brent Bell. Hi, Brent. How's it going?
It's going great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you do me a favor and introduce yourself to the Dread Central audience?
Well, my name is William Brent Bell, and I'm a filmmaker.
I don't know if this is an appropriate first question, but it's the first question that comes to my heart, and it's, how does it feel that you got to make a Dark Castle movie?
Oh, really cool. I mean, Dark Castle hasn't been around for a while, and it was such a mainstay of horror for, I don't know, a good decade. And then, of course, decades before that when it really started. But it's so important when you make genre movies to be surrounded by people who kind of understand and have a passion for the genre. Otherwise, things can fall through the cracks because people don't really care about the horror as much. And the politics become really tricky. But Dark Castle, that's their brand. I mean, their brand is fun, fan-friendly horror, I think is what Alex Mace said to me a few years ago when they were kicking everything off again. And I think Orphan First Kill is kind of like exactly that.
I have to agree with that. Before we get into Orphan First Kill, I'm just curious, do you have any other, outside of Orphan, do you have any other favorite Dark Castle properties or movies?
There's a lot of things I loved about Ghost Ship. I mean, that opening sequence.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I definitely liked those movies. Like, they were really fun, back like 20 years ago or whenever that was. And then I think, Gothica was cool. It was cool. I remember seeing, Robert Downey Jr. kind of in his worst moments, like in a cool film. And that opening sequence to Ghost Ship was awesome. And so it's like, I'm excited for them because I feel like they're just getting going, they've only done a few things really so far. Yeah. And I think this one, this is one of the first ones to kind of kick off their brand again.
Yeah. So, I have a feeling it's going to make a splash. If you're okay with it, maybe we can jump a little bit into Orphan First Kill. Congrats on this outrageous new movie. My first question is, why do you think fans love Orphan so much?
That's interesting because I can just kind of speak to it as a fan. It was a great movie. It's kind of really, it's it's stood the test of time pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's still dated aspects of it when you watch the film, but it had such a great cast. It had an extraordinary cast for a genre movie. And then, Isabelle Furhman is just kind of was unforgettable as that little girl. And of course, the movie had a great twist, which was really just, an extension of her character,
Yes.
which just makes her character even that much more interesting. And, you watch it today and you just you don't see many kids that pull off what she did in that movie today.
No, never. Was it always mandatory that she would be coming back?
No, I mean, it was not the, I guess it wasn't the plan. I mean, when I came on board and they had just kind of really finished the script, they had talked to her. I think the writers, David Leslie Johnson McKittrick, he had kept her in the loop, and maybe Alex Mace as well, with kind of drafts of the script, just because, she was so important to the original. And the idea really was that she would have a cameo. I think that's why, I know in speaking to Paramount at one point not too long ago, they were like, we couldn't believe that we got to buy this movie, because why didn't Warner Brothers ever make this movie? Or, and they were like, it's because they just assumed, I mean, why would you make the movie without her? And we can't make it with her, so let's let the rights go. And then Dark Castle ran with that. At first it was kind of, the focus was the script, but it was going, well, what are we gonna, it was kind of like we were tabling it, because nobody wanted to quite tackle it, because it was such an impossible idea of what to do with Esther. And, there were ideas of, do we completely reinvent her and put her in a blonde wig? I mean, she's kind of a con artist, kind of a chameleon in a way. Isabelle reached out to me just because she was excited that I came on board. And then we saw each other, and that was the first time I met her. And I was like, oh, wow, you still look the same. And then she told me how passionate she was about still wanting to come on board and play the character, which is crazy, because I never would have dragged her, into the idea or tried to talk her into it, because, that just would have been a nightmare if she wasn't 1,000% into it. It would have made everybody's job harder. It would have made the cast question what they were doing if she was, not excited about it. But she was so excited about it, it just allowed everybody else to go, great, then we can just do our jobs. And but anyway, when she told me she wanted to do it, and that same day I started getting really intense messages from fans on social media, death threat stuff, going, you can't make this movie without, Isabelle Furhman. And so after that week, and then we went and had dinner, and we went through the script, and we talked about and I was like, I think, we can do it. I have a bunch of ideas. I had done similar stuff, but in the opposite way, made a guy bigger and things like that in a movie. And so I said, look, we really need to take this seriously, her being in the movie. It's like, this movie is so much a fan movie. It's so much about the emotional connection to that character. To bring in a new person is just not going to be the same. And, and I just felt really confident that we could do it without it being, a full on CG crazy situation that would have put an extra zero on the budget. And even then, I don't think it would have worked. But, and so everybody loved the idea. It just took about a year of convincing, and tests and on every level. And then, it was going to be either her, or we had been doing casting parallel. It was either going to be her, or we were going to use a child. And until literally just, the second they saw the final test I did, and then it just got kind of quiet. And then they called and they're like, we're making the deal with Isabelle. It's like, it's all, we're moving forward. And it was just awesome. And because that test, especially, I got to kind of show what we were going to do. It still was not quite fully there. But as soon as we finished that day of shooting, and it was hilarious. It was crazy. But just one day of shooting of her, I did it like a teaser trailer. And I called up Alex Mace, pulled over on the side of the road, and I was just like, it's going to work. It's amazing. We can't do this movie in any way. Once she started acting and started playing with me, and I was just like, all right, it's Esther again. This is crazy. It was so cool. So looking back, it would have been just as much a feat, if not a bigger feat, to forget introducing a new character, which would have been a bummer, sort of. But 10, 12-year-old actress trying to play 30, a 30-year-old psychopath. When you really look at what she had to do in the film, it would have been even more difficult than anything we did technically with Isabelle, I think.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe the tone of the Orphan franchise?
Well, I think it's evolving. I mean, I think the original film was, our perspective was more the victim. It was more mom's perspective, and we didn't know who, or the family's perspective, and we didn't really know who Esther was. And so there's a bit of mischievousness there, and seeing what she did and how cruel and kind of evil she could be. And in this story, we're in on that secret. And so it allowed us to kind of have a little bit more fun, because now we're seeing the world sort of more from Esther's perspective, in which case she's a grown-up having to dress up like a child. That's not fun for her. That's frustrating. And she's only doing it as a means to an end, but then she kind of gets stuck in it. And then the idea, that there's twists and turns in the story. So it just allowed us to kind of have a little more fun. Almost, I think, when I first came on board and I read it, the second one and this one, and it was, the tone shifted a bit. We kind of compared it to, say, like Thor, like the original Thor movie was very earnest. And the second one was much more fun, yet it was the same actor, and all of a sudden he became funny. So it kind of played into that a little bit. And so I think it's a dark, sinister story on many levels. Certainly the psychology of her and what she goes through, and the kind of heartbreak, even, which usually leads to her anger and violence, and but also fun without being too fun.
I thought it was fun as hell. One of my favorite things about it was that I perceived it to be politically incorrect without being problematic. Was that a tough balance for you to find?
Yeah, I think. Do you mean like what appears to be a child having almost a relationship with an adult?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Well, that certainly was like. There's a scene that didn't make it into the movie that maybe we'll release one day. It's pretty funny. It was pretty too funny for the movie, but at the same time, it was also quite racy. And I think we get away with it. I don't worry about any of those things, whereas I did early on, and I think there were adjustments made to where it's like, and also knowing that one, it's not a child actress. And two, the character is not a child, even though we don't go extremely far in how kind of racy or adult she is. It's still kind of more emotional. And I think we get away with it. And then, there's also kind of the aspect of her size and her condition, which I don't know. I've seen people get in hot water over pretty small things in movies.
I think you get away with it.
I think so.
It's such an interesting balance that you found. It's kind of refreshing.
I hope so. I think so.
Generally on this podcast, I like to talk about horror movies that didn't make it out of development. And I'm wondering, have you ever had a project that never survived development hell?
I've had 100 projects that haven't survived. I think in the horror space, the two big ones actually were series that one I sold to USA with Jason Blum, and one to Fox with Chris Morgan. And they were both, horror series. And this was about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when still people were networks or at that time it was more networks even, but streamers, everybody, outlets were a little bit more scratching their head because they didn't understand how to do a series that kind of revolved around horror. And every time I would pitch, we sold these ideas and wrote them pilots, and everything was going great. And at that time, this was 2016 actually, I think. And at that time, USA and TNT were both planning on having horror nights, like Friday night horror and Sunday night horror, like where would be a block of just horror shows. and I think TNT was going to be M Night was like the umbrella for the whole night, and then both those things didn't happen. The test subject for Fox was the Exorcist series, which was the one that got our spot. Our show was called Haunted, and the one on Fox. And it was like the night The Boy came out is when they told me it wasn't moving forward and The Exorcist was. And it just was one of those situations where we sold it in the room to Fox. They bought it, in the room. And then the writing of it just was so easy because it just worked so well. And everybody was so excited about it until that last second, what I was going to say is a lot of times with horror television, then especially, they're like, we don't really understand how you can do horror on television because you have to kill so many people. And then you just kill off all your characters. And it's like, well, no, that's not really true. Ozark is almost a horror show. Stranger Things certainly is a horror show, but all the characters have pretty much survived. So it's just about making things scary and fun, and depending on your tone, I still think even the darkest stuff is fun. And I think they've kind of caught up to it now much better with whether it be how much Stranger Things how exciting it's been, to even things like The Outsider. Kind of that spectrum shows you that quote unquote horror on television it's just drama with another degree of madness one way or another. And and then the show with Jason Blum was called Posthuman, and it was like my kind of take on zombies. Same thing. We sold that to USA, and it all went great. And they shifted gears with their personnel, and then the show kind of got hung up. And once things get hung up, it's hard to shake them out of development hell, like what you're saying. And still, when I would go see Jason, like for a couple of years after that, they'd be like, by the way, we're still doing that show. I mean, it's 5 seasons. We're doing it. But we never did it. It still could though. I mean, it's still not been done. It's still like a great series.
But it's up to them. Like, you can't take it elsewhere. You don't.
I at one point with Haunted, we did try to take it a few places, and then that show Evil is. I mean, Haunted was about one haunting over the course of a season at a house of this family. It's based on a true story, based on a book called I can't remember the name of the book now, but we call the show Haunting. But that show Evil seems, it's more of a network show, but it's kind of similar in a way to, two people investigating kind of a case that is supernatural and horrific. So at one point, Roy Lee's company was, looking at finding a way to do it. And it just, it always, the producer's deal, they left Fox, and Chris Morgan, they left Fox to go to NBC, and then now they're actually at Sony with their TV side. So, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. You just see the everybody involved kind of scatter, and then there's the project sitting at the studio or the production company, at the financing company, and it has no champions. Same thing happened with Orphan First Kill. Like we sold the movie to Paramount, and then I went to London to shoot the film I just am finishing, which is called Lord of Misrule. And while I was in London, they changed regimes at Paramount, and then all of a sudden Orphan First Kill got kind of pushed aside, even though we'd already, made the deal for it. And then by the time I got back and I talked to the people in charge of it, and they were like, oh, we're just getting everybody, up to speed with the movie, because, it's all new people sort of at Paramount. But it was great. And and they were like, but we love it so much. And they just geeked out on the movie. And then about 2 weeks later, my agent was like, hey, check the trades. And that whole regime, Paramount Players, got ousted. And then all of a sudden, we had nobody again for this movie. And then it wasn't until, a month ago that we found out that we were doing this release like this. So, anyway, it was almost in development hell. I mean, it wasn't a script. It was a movie that almost got lost. The way that, we're seeing other movies kind of get lost right now.
Yeah, it's making a lot of news lately.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, I feel really fortunate. And today we got to see the whole marketing plan for the movie, and it was amazing. And we've been seeing it all over the world, all the different countries. Everybody's really having fun and excited about it. But back to those shows. Yeah, I tried to call once. I talked to Cooper at Blumhouse about I wanted to take the show Post-Human and make it a movie. I still would. And he was like, I don't know if I see that. And then we just kind of dropped the conversation. But it's still it could be a very contained, cool kind of zombie real-time movie.
I hope that you get to make it. And I hope that you sort of keep pushing for it. You never know. It seems like you had a big surprise a month or two ago with Orphan.
Yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. I mean, as soon as I think a project is not going to move forward and I turn my attention to something else, then I get a phone call and it's like, we're doing it. I consider, by the way, I could, go through literally 25 horror projects that are in development hell. But that's another conversation.
Is there a fantasy IP in the horror universe that you'd love to take on? A franchise or a sequel or a remake of any kind?
This is kind of a fantasy one, but I think it's also doable, but I don't know for sure if it's fully clever enough. With it is a movie called The Other, which is based on a novel from 1971. It was a bestseller for like 6 months. And then they made this film in 1972 about these two twin brothers who live in the country, and one's sweet and one's not so sweet. And it's this amazing movie that is not very well known. And Fox owns the rights. And at one point I was going to do it with Roy Lee's company. And actually the movie Goodnight Mommy came out, which was a cool movie. But I remember sitting in the theater and just looking around at people about 5 minutes in and 10 minutes in. I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is The Other. Like, this is exactly what,
Uh-oh.
But it was so much like, but anyway, I've always loved that movie. And it's got a tone that I really just gravitate towards. It's, the tone that's kind of in that space of the boy and somewhat maybe Orphan.
Cool.
And
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you should. It's great. It's creepy. Yeah.
One of the last things I have to bring up today is myself and so many people I know are such big fans of Stay Alive. And I'm wondering, is there any chance we'll see a continuation of that in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a few months ago, the rights to it shifted. Disney had it in Spyglass, and then Spyglass changed, and those guys all went to MGM, and then they came back and started a new Spyglass about a year or two ago, and they acquired. And so so they did Scream. So they acquired Dimension's library, and Scream was their first new movie. And so then the weekend after Scream came out, I had a meeting with them about doing a sequel to Stay Alive. And it was great. I mean, and I'm just busy. So it's like, probably in the next week or two, we're going to have another meeting about it. Because it's one of those movies to me that, I love so much and I love the characters, and it just kind of scratched the surface of the concept because of, the size and scope of the movie. And it kind of, at the time, the producers were like, nobody's going to watch, kids playing a video game or care about, and the video game turned out to be one of the best parts of the movie that, we hoped would be part of the story. And that was the idea. But, when we made that movie, people weren't being paid not only were they not being paid to win video game tournaments, millions and millions of dollars, but they certainly weren't. Nobody thought Twitch, you would watch people play video games.
Yeah.
And so the world's only expanded like exponentially, and that story's just as relevant as it was. And then there's just so many fun ways to, I wouldn't call it a legacy sequel, but in a way, I think there's a hint of that would be amazingly fun. And I know everybody in the cast from the original would love to dip their toe in it, and then creating a whole new mythology for it. Anyway, it's
Yeah. Do fans
I hope
approach
so.
you about that movie a lot?
Well, every day. If I check any kind of social media every single day.
I love that. Good. I'm so glad. Show that to Paramount or whoever needs to see it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for chatting with today, and congrats on your new film. It's
Thank
outrageous,
you.
as I said. Everyone should watch
Yes.
it. And yeah, best of luck. Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.